Well, welcome. Tonight we're going to talk about one of the jewels of Milford. And we're going to start with introductions, especially the first person who I think has been in this studio between schools, budgeting, the youth center now, the selectmen. I mean, you've been in this studio more than I have lately.
I think so, lately, yeah.
But let's start with introductions.
Hi, I'm Mike Walsh. I'm chairman of the Milford Youth Commission.
And now you turn your hat from,
That's right.
from chairman of the school and everything else.
Right.
I'm Jen Ward. I'm the director of the Milford Youth Center.
And a new face.
I'm Katie Covell. I'm the assistant director.
I'm Christine D'Addario. I'm the program coordinator.
I'm Victoria Williams. I'm a youth leadership coordinator at the Milford Youth Center.
Wow. Place has come a long way from when they used to lie to us when I was a kid, because that balcony, they told us you couldn't go up there.
You shouldn't go on there.
Well, no, but they told us you couldn't. We never knew that they were just telling us they didn't want us up there, you know, because we were playing ball hockey there. That used to be the big thing every Monday night. There wasn't much else going. Well, I guess the guys were playing Army in there. It was
Right.
still the Armory back then. But tell me, what's going on at the youth center?
A lot. You know, we've through the help of the Finance Commission, we've been able to get some funding and hire, you know, new employees. Katie is the assistant director, the program director, and I apologize, I didn't hear.
Victoria.
Yeah. So, you know, we've beefed up our staff, so we're offering much more programs. It's really going well.
So, point blank, why do we have a youth center?
We need it.
Why?
We need it for, you and I spoke about this earlier, Al, is that, you know, the programs that are in there in the evenings, not that they're not important, they are important, you know, whether it's the volleyball and the basketball and the batting cages. But the after-school program is a key program to me, because there are children, if you go in there, that are being tutored. There are being children that are being taught arts and crafts. There are being children that are being taught proper diet and exercise. There are children in there that sometimes just can't figure out what's going on in life. And they have an opportunity to have an adult that'll talk to them, sit down and help them through their problems. You know, and then there's just kids in there after school just having a good time. But the most important thing is they're there, they're safe, and they're protected.
And I think that's the biggest thing for people to understand, is when you sit there and say, why? Well, why do we have a football program? Because you have kids who want to play football. Why do we have soccer? Why do we have, you know, and you walk down the list, and, you know, it's the old adage, God created more than vanilla ice cream,
Right.
so everybody could have their own flavor.
Right.
And to me, the youth center is just one of the flavors that we're dealing with, a narrow slice, but then the programs seem to be broadening. I mean, when I listen to Miss Katie and she starts reading her calendar, doesn't seem like a lot of idle time there.
Oh, there isn't, and you know, and Katie did. She spoke about her calendar earlier, but I tell people all the time, you need to come in and look at what these ladies have done with the youth center, between the upstairs tutoring room, between the arts program, between what they've done downstairs. We've got an exercise center. I'm telling you, I think it's better than some professional ones, you know. With the movie room, you should see the movie room and the people that have contributed. You know, the woman, I don't know if she was the original woman that painted the mural, but you were a Milford kid. Remember the mural that was on the wall? We have a replica of that in the movie room at the youth center. Yeah.
But now, when we think of the youth center, you know, the programs, they're pretty broad-reaching programs, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're dealing with academics, sports, what would you call it, general health?
We have a nutrition program that Christine runs. Yeah.
I think every child has a different personality, so you need to kind of span and provide something for everybody. You know, you have kids that are doing nutrition or sewing that aren't going to do basketball. You know,
And I think we listen to people's opinions from the past. You know, a lot of our programs before the renovation were geared towards athletics, and we really wanted to allow a program and a facility with this new space that provided variety of programs that every kid that enters the youth center can find something that they're interested in.
You know, I think that's the biggest draw. You know, let's face it, we spent $5 million I mean, when we were kids, you could have bought Milford for $5 million. They would have thrown in Hopedale.
Well, I think too, Al, where these ladies have done a great job to what Jen just said, there were comments coming, when it was under renovation, there were comments going around town, well, you're just building a $5 million basketball court. That's incorrect. That if you make that statement now, then you're not going in the youth center, because that's just part of what goes on in that building every single day.
Katie, pick a program.
Jump rope.
Okay, wait a minute. $5 million building, and what's jump rope?
Jump rope. We have a competitive jump rope team that comes in, and they did a demonstration about what they do for halftime shows at big collegiate games. And we're trying to get other kids interested in other ways to exercise rather than just your typical basketball, football, soccer.
And that's a program that I just have to, sorry to interrupt, but it's a perfect example of how this community gives back. We met with a Waters representative, Waters Corporation, who were giving gifts for our kids for Christmas. And we gave them a tour of the facility, explained what we do, what programs we offer. They had a connection to their child that was involved in this jump roping program, set up a meeting for us to meet with them, the program coordinator and the assistant director and I, and we figured out a way to bring this opportunity to the youth center because they thought what we were doing was amazing for the community, and then they wanted to find their way to give back, and now they provide this free program for our kids after school on Mondays.
So what do you do with jump rope? Now you got my curiosity.
There's a bunch of different kinds. So they have single jump ropes that they do just speed work. They have individualized routines where this one child is very acrobatic, backflips, push-up, everything with a jump rope.
Trust me, you and I wouldn't be doing that.
I could do one jump, whomp, and then I'd be flat on my face.
They pogo stick with a jump.
Yep.
They jump rope
Yeah.
while pogo
Yep.
on a pogo stick.
Really?
Double Dutch. They
Yeah.
have two ropes going at the same time, and you're jumping in the middle. And they teach all the kids, and they put on demonstration, and then they let the kids try every single thing that they want, and they teach them techniques and everything.
Acrobatics and double Dutch.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be trying to duck out of that rope. But seriously, that's incredible. So
Yeah.
somebody who really has an affinity, you'd have to be a heck of an athlete.
Yeah. And that's what other kids don't get. I actually was on a competitive jump rope team when I was
Really?
growing up. But one of our high school kids, he's like, Katie, I challenge you to see how many double unders you can do. So that's the rope going under you 2 times. And I was like, okay, you go first. So he did a couple, and then I took the rope, and then I kept going. He goes,
I wish I had seen
What?
that.
Well, you know, it's always, you know, you look at gymnastics and
Yep.
how people, well, it's not like he's a football athlete.
yeah.
And then I see these guys doing those cross things and all, and I'm
Like,
like,
try doing it.
oh my God. When you think of the physical shape
Yep.
that they have to be in, I mean, how long does a jump rope thing last?
Their like demonstrations or performances usually last around 5 minutes.
So you're jumping. It's like sprinting for 5 minutes.
Certain things. A performance or a demonstration, they'll do other moves in between, and they'll go from different ropes to different ropes. But if you're doing an individualized event, your routine's probably around 2 to 3 minutes, and that's just straight jumping.
A 3-minute sprint. I mean, I'm trying to think, if we lasted a minute and a half on the ice, you know, the professional athletes, you know, they're going, what, 45 seconds to a minute? And then I'd go 2 minutes. I'm out of breath if I'm skating hard. 3-minute sprint? Wow.
Yeah.
How many kids are jump roping?
For our program, we had, I think, 12 to 15. And surprisingly, last Monday, I'd say 95% were boys.
Why surprising?
Everybody automatically assumes that jump roping is for girls.
Well, I'm just
That's
thinking
true.
athletes. I would imagine
Well-
you'd get as many male athletes. Well,
That's what you'd think, but we had to have them put on their demonstration first to get our kids involved.
oh,
So they didn't really know. They're like, oh, I'm not going to jump rope. And then they saw what they were doing. They're like, wait, I want to try that.
Yeah. And it was a learning lesson. I mean, we explained to the kids how much core strength is involved, how much coordination, and that you can use that as a transferable skill to any type of sport. And so it was really fun and interesting to see the boys watch, and then we challenged them to try it, and then they realized how difficult it was, and then they're participating in it after that.
yeah, it's amazing when you start looking at old stereotypes. You know, like nobody ever thought men would be cheerleaders. till they realized you can get college scholarships being a cheerleader.
A lot of people don't know that Vince Lombardi, the famous coach of the Green Bay Packers, made his linemen take ballet,
Yeah.
taught them balance.
I mean, I laugh because one of, the people you can feel most proud of in Milford, Frank Larkin, Judge Larkin, he was a Holy Cross cheerleader,
Wow.
and he takes a lot of pride in telling people he was.
Right.
But again, when you see what they go through, this is not siskumba rah rah. I mean, these guys and gals are really putting themselves out there. You stumped me. I would have never thought jump rope would be the first program. Pick another one.
Let's see. How about
March Madness.
March Madness?
Let's talk about March Madness.
Seeing as we just started
Today.
We had kids sign up last week, and we run a 3-on-3 tournament. We have teams of 5, and each team gets to pick a college team, their favorite college team, and we make a bracket. And they play March Madness alongside the NCAA team.
So we have 80 kids right now participating in that program.
And how does it work?
So last week we had the kids sign up and we made the teams. And what's awesome about this program is you have high schoolers playing with middle schoolers as well, and they're teaching them the skills. Some of these kids are not in structured basketball programs, so they're learning alongside some of their older peers. And we have, like we said, we have a 16 team bracket double elimination. So every Tuesday and Thursday, the kids will come in. They got their t-shirts today. We did the first set of games, and then double elimination all the way to the championship at the end, and then we do a 3-point contest for everybody to come back in and kind of celebrate the end of the tournament.
It's amazing how far-reaching something like March Madness is. I was in tears laughing. My darling bride is in a biotech company. To listen to the scientists at lunch, how they pick their brackets. You'd hear, oh, this school has very good physiology department. Pick them. This one has an incredible biochemistry department. And we're looking saying, guys, I don't really think how good their pre-med program or their physiology program or their post-grad biochemistry program is really affects the basketball players. But that's how they picked them. We were just amazed that they would even pick. They wanted to play, and their only, criteria was how good academically the school was.
It could be hand in hand.
Yeah, they did as well as I did. The one thing I can guarantee is if you follow my lead, you will fail probably, maybe not the worst, but you'll be there close.
Al, but what you see, or what you're listening to is, as a board member, an example of how a board oversees the operation of the youth center but doesn't get involved. It's these ladies that do it every single day, and these are the results of what you get, instead of sticking your nose in where it doesn't belong and allowing them to do
Your
their
role
job.
is to set the strategic direction, not, in my mind, to deal with the tactical implementation.
Right, but look what they've done in a very short amount of time.
So now, how do you approach?
Oh, well, I serve at the Milford Youth Center through Social Capital Inc. AmeriCorps. And basically AmeriCorps is a national program, and basically they get young adults who are interested in helping out with their communities. And I'm a youth leadership coordinator, so I basically handle the JAG Youth Council. So I have kids ages I have a 17-year-old, so 8 to 17, and they basically come in, they meet every Wednesday for an hour, and they talk about ways to better the community, better the youth center.
You say JAG.
Yes.
Everybody here knows what a JAG is. The 6 loyal viewers might not know. JAG to them is a TV series.
So it's the Juvenile Advocacy Group, but I manage the Youth Council, so it's just the kids. For example, they do little things to give back. So one of the things that we did recently was we made little goodie bags for the Senior Center Valentine's Day tea party, and I got to bring them over. It was lovely.
How nice to
Yeah.
get the kids helping out the seniors. What are the big issues that the JAG group faces?
Well, they balance like so many other things. Like they balance school, sports, and then they still come to JAG. And especially the high schoolers, like they have their own lives. They're growing up. They still make time, but sometimes it's hard to just get everybody to come together. But they do.
And you approach programs.
Yes, I coordinate programs and I also facilitate programs.
Okay, so, I mean, we just heard jump rope program came.
So I don't run that one.
No,
I
but
coordinated that one.
How do you look and say, these are the kind of programs that we want?
Honestly, sometimes I'm laying there at night and I'm thinking, oh, we should do this for the kids, or I really like to do this, I want to show them this, or I've learned this, I want to show them this, or I want to take them away from their phones and get them back into real life skills. So we have sewing for that.
Take them away from, I
yeah.
thought they were surgically
They are.
implanted.
During
They
our
really are.
programs, they're put away though, right?
But yes, and we're really starting to mandate that no phones during programs. But in sewing, they can't have their phone because they're sewing. They have both their hands, they're using both their hands. In nutrition, they're cooking. So again, they're using both their hands. In arts and crafts, they're using both their hands. Those are things you can't have your phone.
It's a wonderful life lesson because it seems like this generation, the millennials, find it absolutely acceptable to be in the middle of a meeting and whip out their phone. And I find that just basically rude.
Oh, absolutely.
I see adults doing it nowadays too. It's crazy.
Well, it permeates. And you sit there and say, wait a minute, you're using my oxygen. If you're not interested in what we're saying, then this meeting is over.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's hard because, you know, even at the dinner table,
Oh, yeah.
now all of a sudden even my darling bride is walking around and I refuse. I come home, I put the phone in its little charging station. There's a reason we have 18 phones in the house. You want me, call me on my landline, I'll pick it up. But I'm not going to walk around tethered to
Right.
this contraption.
I agree.
You know, so many people say, I tried calling you. I said, well, that's why I have a home number.
But so many people don't even have a home line anymore.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. My daughter, Comcast gave her a home number. She never gave it to me, and I said, why? She goes, because I don't have a phone hooked up to it. She came to the house and said, I need to take a phone in case of an emergency that my cell phone goes down. I should have a regular phone. That's like foreign to me.
I don't think kids would know how to operate it. I honestly don't. I honestly don't.
If there's not an app for it, then they don't know how to
There
do
you
it.
go.
Yeah.
It was like the time when the crew here came in and said, we really want to do a new intro for your show. I said, well, what's wrong with the intro I have? They said, it's old. And they said, that sound. I said, what sound? They said, the analog printer. Michael, I was stumped. What in God's earth is an analog typewriter? Because these kids had never grown up using a typewriter.
Right.
To them, it was something they saw on old black and white movies.
Yeah, I was in a discussion with some kids from the high school and they were talking about keyboarding. I said, oh, they still offer typing? And they looked at me and they said, no, keyboarding. You know, they give you this.
Okay, Jen or Mike, give you a chance to answer one of the misconceptions. Well, one of the thoughts people have. We built a $5 million youth center for 50 kids.
Totally incorrect.
Nope.
50
Totally.
kids for the first 30
And I-
seconds.
And I always have to interrupt that because it's a perception that I'm so, it's frustrating to hear it still because it's the people that aren't coming into the building. We have just under 600 registered after school members with an average of 150 kids a day. And that's unduplicated kids. So
That's
they're-
real people.
Those are
It's
real
not a kid
people.
went in and out 3 times.
No, that's what the
Swiping it in and out.
unduplicated, and that's why our new sign-in system is so important because every kid that is a registered after-school member gets a little barcode card that they use to sign in. It's how they sign up for programs. It's how they sign in and sign out. So this
We're swiping kids? How cool.
was one of the most important things that we purchased right before we entered the new facility because we knew our numbers were going to go up. We knew we wanted our programs to increase, and that was part of the argument going forward, and it has. And we have provided a system that tracks this data, not just the sign-in, sign-outs, but the demographics or statistics so that we can write grants and even improve our programming even more so. So It's not true. It's completely false. And I invite every single one of those people that still believe that perception to be true to enter our facility at 2:15 in the afternoon.
Another perception, it's only for kids that are troublesome.
Absolutely false.
Well, I'd ask, what's a troubled child?
Well, you know what I think of that label.
Yeah.
But realistically, the perception's out there.
Right. But that's not true at all. That's not true. It's for every child, you know, and they do a great job of making sure of that, you know. And we've even gone as far as we invite the seniors in the morning, you know, to use the facility to walk around, or, you know, I think Katie's going to start an exercise program with the seniors eventually, or, I mean, trust me,
is
the
cool.
town will get their $5 million worth out of it. But what happens is, unfortunately, as you know, there's always some naysayers.
Well, you're going to get naysayers, but there's a lot of perception from when Paul Revere used to go there and play ball hockey with us. You know, at the end of the day, you know, there's still people who remember
Yep.
what it was.
Yep.
You know, we had 20 kids from the Heights or 12 kids from the Heights on a typical night going down there, and the place was empty except for the Army guys.
Yeah.
You know, so there's still a lot of people who think of, you know, 12 to 20 kids go to that youth center.
Yep. And I think, you know, Tom O'Laughlin, the police chief, I think he thinks so much about, does he still have an officer come in every so often? They just walk in, talk to the kids, and, you know, trying to be proactive, you know?
But see, that's important. I mean, I've been very proud of Milford, because when I read the New York Times about all the protests, all of the organized events about police across the country, I feel really good that Milford's had 2 organized events. One was the cold, rainy day that so many of us sat out to say thank you
Right.
to the police. And the second is the silly little signs that we have that say we support our police. That, to me, is a strong statement from a community. And if you get kids interacting with police in a non-threatening, you know, I mean, it's not like he's pulling you over for speeding or you're doing something silly. He's just there like a normal person. That's got to help all over.
Well, one of the things that they work on all the time is that if you took and held up a picture of a policeman to a young adult, in their brain is a negative.
Yeah.
And they need to change that to a positive, because they're there to help. They're not there, you know, yeah, you run a red light, well, you ran a red light. But I mean, you know, when you're in a crisis situation, you're in a bind, they're there to help you, you know, and that's what police are working on, particularly the Milford Police Department works on it every day, is that, hey, I'm on the sidewalk, but I'm here to help you. You know, you may be in a troubled spot, but I'm here to help you. You know?
Yeah, if I don't have that tension going in, it's just going to not exacerbate whatever situation I'm in. Okay, another perception. Youth center's only for sports and babysitting.
Oh, what?
I've heard it. We're a glorified daycare, but it's
Yes,
not the
I mean,
case, so-
I want to bring it out because it's out there. Victoria, people have said glorified babysitting for, you know, teenagers.
Kids can come and go as they please. If it was a babysitter, they wouldn't be able to leave. You know, I mean,
So I mean, if you look at our calendar, which is available at on our website, you know, before the renovation, and it was more due to staffing. It was, you know, we tried to do as much as we could with the programs and the volunteers and the staffing, but now that we have more staff, we're able to provide this type of programming. We used to have 1 structured program a day. So an after-school member enters the youth center, they have a gymnasium, a game room, and a lounge, basically, and then 1 structured program they can choose from. Now we have 4 to 5 every day. So, I mean, if
But they're not all sports,
they're
right?
not all sports related, so they can come in, they can choose if they want to participate in any of those structured programs. And like Katie had mentioned earlier, there's sewing, arts and crafts, nutrition, and then there's the sports programs as well. So we try to balance it for every kid, that every interest that we see and that's needed at the youth center. But they don't have to choose those organized programs as well. You have the game room still, you have the gymnasium and the lounge kitchen area. So the space is there for what each after-school member is looking for.
Now, if I'm having a challenge meeting my academic requirements, does the youth center help me there?
Absolutely. We have a designated space upstairs where they can go quietly, do their homework, get help on their homework. We have a mini computer lab, so they have access to any projects they need to be completed, and a printer up there too as well.
So realistically, you know, we have families who financially aren't doing as well as we'd like, and they may not have a lot of computer resources at home. Or it may be too noisy, busy, it's not conducive to studying. I could come down to the youth center and take care of my academics.
As long as you're a
Absolutely.
registered after-school member, which is basically a form that gives permission to attend as an 8 to 18-year-old.
So take me there. I'm a Milford kid. Do I have the right to go to the youth center?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Is there anything that would stop me from going to the youth center?
Nope. As long as you're a Milford resident or attend Milford Public Schools, you can attend our after-school program. We just have a 2-page registration form with a cover sheet that goes over the disciplinary policy and the basic rules, and then we have the contact information and the permission from a parent and or guardian.
Question that would always obviously come up is how safe is it?
I mean,
Very.
Yeah.
No,
Very. You know, Al, in years past, I used to say to Tom O'Laughlin, and he did support us 100%, but I used to say before we went into the renovation, Chief, you don't support this project, these kids are going to be standing on the corner of store 24. And he burst out laughing, and he said to me, what generation are you living in? And I said, what do you mean? He says, they don't go. They go to someone's home. They go inside where I can't see them. He said, when they're in the youth center, he said, not only do I have the opportunity to send an officer in to make sure that everything's all right, he said, but even when they're on the outside sitting on the steps or leaning on the railings or whatever, at least as when we're driving by, we know where they are so that we can protect them. You know, he said, we know they're in good space, you know, when they're under the care of Jen and Katie and the girls that are, you know, the employees that are watching them. He said, we know they're in a safe
it's
spot.
like a structured, remember the wall?
Yeah.
You're too young to remember the wall. That's where we hung out because there was no place to hang.
Where was the wall?
Oh, God.
I want to know.
Stacy, going up. Stacy's on your right.
Yep.
There's a wall right there.
Oh, okay, of course,
That
yeah.
was the wall.
Oh.
That's where you went and just hung out because the library wasn't there. That was Spruce Street School.
Oh.
Yeah, we're dating ourselves. So it's more like a supervised structured wall.
Yeah. You want to look at that with exercise.
Well,
And
no, but I'm
academic-
saying outside when you
Sewing.
say the kids are just
Yeah,
sitting
yeah.
around.
Some of them I drove by today, and then some of them were just sitting there, and you know, yeah, they had their phones, but you know what? If they're safe, that's all that matters. You know, and they have the ability to get academics. They can get exercise. They can get nutrition. They can learn to sew. They can, you know, some days they just with everything that these kids go through today. Sometimes they just need to
Be kids.
stop and cool off.
But that's probably the part that I like the best. You know, when you think about, my daughter was barely a teenager. She had a goddamn calendar to track all soccer practice. Then we have cheerleading. Then we have this. I sat there and I said, she's too young to be playing with a BlackBerry.
Yeah.
You know, but that was her life already. It's like, when do they get to be kids? You know, just hang out at the wall and for an hour because we're not doing anything, we're just talking.
Well, sometimes I personally think that's part of the problem. You know, I mean, when you talk to people that have young families today and everything they're involved in, that's exactly right. When do they just get to go out in the backyard and kick a soccer ball around? Or everything is all organized now, you know, and I think it's a lot on them.
Yeah, they grew up way too fast.
Yeah.
I want to add one more thing that Christine offers. She offers help with college applications, resumes for jobs, and some steps that they may need to take that maybe they aren't getting the help at home that they need to if they want to further their education or their professional self. So they can come in and talk with her about that.
That is great because I'm so involved with kids up at Holy Cross because the school does teach them to create a solid average resume. And the first thing I tell them is my definition of average, old Portuguese definition, average sucks. I'm sorry. You know, I advertised for a technician in the lab. I got 170 resumes. They almost looked identical. And we keep saying, guys, it's like looking out over a field of white sheep. You're sheep number 133. You gotta know how to raise your hand and make me look. I would imagine if you wanted to hire somebody for the service bay, you'd get a whole bucket of resumes.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
and one of my inherited sons from school, we spent almost an hour and 40 minutes practicing interviewing skills as he went to GE Healthcare for his first interview.
It's
These
really
kids-
important.
You know, so if you start teaching them at high school, that's fantastic. You know, and I'm sure that, you know, when people say, how do I help the kids? If you put out a call and said, look, we'd really like to have some clinics, you know, an hour here, an hour there, to walk through people from industry and say, you know, Michael, what do you look for in a resume if you're hiring in the auto industry? You know, I mean, I couldn't say no if you said, I want to know how to get kids into these kind of programs
Right.
or how to interview for college.
Right.
You know, one of the biggest things we've had over and over for the years is teaching kids how to interview and how to go out junior year and figure out how to get into the better schools.
Right.
You know, programs like that I think are super.
Just last week, Christine took one of the after-school members, an 18-year-old, to the Milford Fire Station. We organized it so that 3 firemen could talk to him because he had aspirations to become a firefighter, but he had no idea where to start. He ended up getting his GED, so he didn't have that normal guidance counselor relationship that you could have. So the firefighters were amazing. They sat down, explained the best steps to get there, and then Christine is now coordinating with a career center that will help get, hopefully, him into a paramedic program. You know, so we don't try to just leave the after-school member for just the program. We want to make sure that they're leaving with, you know, a path.
So for the naysayers, there's an example of how the community has wrapped its arms around the Milford Youth Center for the betterment of the children. That the fire department, 3 firemen
Sure.
would sit down and say, listen, you want to be a fireman, this is the path you've got to take. We're here to help you along the way.
Yeah, and I'm certain there's so many professional people here that if you wanted to tap the community,
And we have been thinking of that, maybe setting up some type of internship program for kids as young as 14. Maybe can go and spend half a day after school with someone or a day or something like that, just to see what it's like to be a nurse. You know, they want to maybe go to school to be a nurse, but they don't know what it's like to be a nurse, so maybe they can spend the day.
especially as they get to high school,
Right.
you know, when you sit there and say, okay, what career are you looking
They're
at?
just grabbing from the sky. Oh, I want to be.
Or what kind of school?
Right.
I mean, how many times I've had to sit with kids and say, what is it you're looking for?
Right.
Because like for me, I loved Holy Cross. It's a small campus, you got to know everybody. Most of my classes, junior, senior year, had 4 to 8 kids.
Wow.
Now, there's a downside to that. You know, my darling bride loved being at Penn State with 300 kids in a class. Okay, but she was brilliant. She really didn't need to be there. So she could hide in the back if she hadn't studied, pick up a book that night, and she's top of the class again. Me, I had to work. But just telling kids, look, this is what you got to think about. This is when you have to think about it. And if you're getting that cross-section of kids, you know, it'd be great. You know, you reach out to the community and you say, hey, look, guys, we need everything from, you know, if you have career nights once a month, everything from voc to college and on down, and interviewing skills.
Yeah. It's huge.
I mean, we do a lot at Holy Cross where we bring kids in and do interviews. Because a lot of that is just getting their confidence. And that, you know, just comes from practice.
Right. I think, too, what's important, Ellen, I'd like to see as time goes on is, you know, the kids eventually graduate from high school and they go on, is randomly bring some of them back
Yeah.
to work. Because you think about it, our child changes every year as they keep, you know, getting older. So we lose a group, gain a new group. And if there wasn't some way that we couldn't bring some of them, hopefully now that are in, you know, community college or regular college or whatever, come back on a school break. You can walk around, talk to the kids, and just say, you know what, I was one of those kids that was just struggling, but, you know.
And they do that because I know Thanksgiving, that weekend, my ungrateful offspring number 2 was going down to do a Milford High class of whatever, 2005 or whatever, 2010. They all get together at Scioli's.
Oh, they all do that.
You know, it's like every class, and, well, they're back in town.
Right.
And it's kind of nice that they still want to touch base with, you know, their classmates.
That's a Milford thing.
That's a Milford thing.
And I'd like to, I mean, Tori is a prime example of that. I'd love you to kind of explain how you ended up coming to us as an AmeriCorps member.
Yeah, well, basically, I moved to Milford after moving a lot when I was 14. My brother basically had me go to the youth center with him. So I was an after-school member at the youth center for all throughout high school, and I joined the youth council there, the JAG group. Jen was actually the leader at the time, and I just went through school and I balanced my sports and my schoolwork with JAG, and here I am now serving the youth center through AmeriCorps. So
AmeriCorps, you got involved through school, or how did you get involved?
Well, Jen was actually an AmeriCorps member at the youth center. So she talked to me a little bit about the programs and everything, and like what they were about, and I really liked it, and I saw myself being an AmeriCorps member, especially at the youth center.
Well, see, I love the idea because so many of the kids, again, my experience is limited to Holy Cross. They're AmeriCorps, but they're sent all over the country. Mm-hmm. I want them to stay here and help out. So
I stayed.
But that's a great move. That, you know, here's somebody who was in Milford and came back to help the Milford kids.
Mm-hmm. And it was a nice, easy transition. The kids trusted her. They knew her. She was one of them. And it was nice to be able to hand over the reins to someone that cared about the program. And it's been able to sustain itself, and the kids are doing great and doing a lot in the community.
Well, your credibility has to be up when you can talk about things that they're experiencing. You know, like we
Yeah.
joke at our age about the wall.
Oh yeah.
You guys have no idea. You know, it's not going to relate to you at all. To us, you know, when they talk about the U-turn, a few of us just, oh God, yes, where we used to have long academic discussions on Thursday
Part of the
nights.
U-turn.
Huh?
Part of the U-turn.
Yeah, well, yeah, that was, Milford High School had a rule that you couldn't have announcements unless you were an organized club. So somebody, and you know, every class took credit for it, would announce the Milford High Sewing Club. So the Sewing Club will meet tonight at Huey Turner's or at Eddie Grover's, which the Grove was down by Waters. And that's where everybody got together for academic discussions. that
Sewing.
Yeah.
You know, but you can always tell an old Milfordian when you say U-turn, and if they look at you blank, nah, it's a young person. So, movie room.
Yes.
What's a movie room?
A nice, quiet room where kids can go down, enjoy, relax on a Friday afternoon, and just watch a movie with their friends. We pick a movie that's obviously PG.
God bless you. When I was entertainment chairman at Maryland Yacht Club,
Yep.
picking a movie that,
No one's happy.
yeah, how do you even start it these days?
Well, at first I was like, I would hear some of the kids talk, and Christine and I would go to the library, and we'd be like, okay, they mentioned this name, maybe we'll get that. And that was only that one kid that wanted that movie.
Yes, exactly.
Fine.
Well, we quickly learned that you can't give them the choice.
Right. So then I was like, well, I
give
want to
them
watch this
options.
movie, so I'm going to bring this in. And then we brought back a couple old movies from even like when we were kids, like what I offered one time, Land Before Time. And they were like, what's that?
Oh my God. Old
Put that in
movie.
I'm going to let that one go.
The little dinosaurs, that's not an old movie.
We had a list going on for a while, and
Yeah.
then we would cross-reference to make sure it was appropriate, so that we were selecting movies that the kids were putting on the list.
Yeah, more than once I had to dive for the VCR because something came on and it's like, huh? Wait a minute. And the weight room, you talk about the weight room.
Oh, let them, it's over the top. You have to see it.
Yeah, you really do have to come see it. I mean, it's evolved over the years, and it's all through donations, which is
I
amazing.
remember somebody donated most of that equipment.
Yep, there's
Yes,
I mean, it's
keeps
even,
coming.
Yeah. Now
Oh,
we
is that
have,
right?
Now we have a lot more cardio equipment. I mean, and again, to show where the town steps in, we did end up purchasing a few pieces at a very reasonable cost recently of a gym closing down, and the highway department came and met us at the youth center. They followed us to Holliston, picked up the equipment for us because it wouldn't fit in our trucks that we borrowed. And again, I'm going to put a shout out to Imperial. Imperial let us
Yes.
use a truck as well. So it's just showing the collaboration and working together to make sure that, because that was one of the last pieces that we needed in that gym to kind of make it a complete gym.
So can I say now these pieces we're going to hopefully use for a CrossFit program that we're starting in April, and that was through collaboration with the hospital. They wanted to put on programs for kids but didn't have the space, so they came to us. So now kids will get to do a free CrossFit program, 6-week CrossFit program run by a local CrossFit,
CrossFit program.
which would normally cost $200 a
No.
month or whatever.
Explain what a
Oh,
CrossFit
I'll let
program.
Jen, because I don't.
Torture.
I mean, the perception is it's this high intensity, pick really heavy things up and put them down type philosophy.
I saw that
It's
commercial.
not,
I picked it up.
exactly. And it's not really the case. It teaches you technique of weightlifting and workout regimen that, is transferable again, So we met with the CrossFit members, the one that runs, it's CrossFit Never Doubt out of Milford, and we met with the representatives from Milford Regional Hospital to kind of go over the proposal and made sure that, these kids wouldn't be picking up weights that they shouldn't be, that they would be learning the technique and really getting those skills. And it's just it's an exciting program to bring the youth center because it's popular right now. Kids want to do it.
Skills,
Trendy.
you're talking about doing it safely.
Oh, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
That was the biggest
The
thing the
hospital's
hospital.
involved.
For you or I, that's 10 pounds.
Well, they don't even start with weight.
Not at
They
first, yeah.
watch their form with no weight whatsoever, and until they correct their form so that they're not going to hurt themselves, then they will pick up the weight.
So even somebody rotund like me could go there and do something?
Yep.
See, and again, that goes back to that awful word perception. That's why people that have questions need to get into the building so they can really see what goes on in that building now, because it is so different. Jay D'Antonio and Paul Sievers should be so proud of that facility. They really should be.
The entire town should now. too,
Yeah, but I mean, Jay had a vision. Paul was his friend and carried it on, and it just continues to grow and get better and better and better with the help. And Jen makes a valid point of the whole community wrapping its arms around it.
Well, I mean, you think about it. I mean, obviously, we're reminded by my number one inherited son, Mr. Seaver, when
Yep.
Dan comes over. But you can feel the pride, and sometimes it's once a year. If nothing else, if somebody wants to help, just buying tickets to that fundraiser.
Yep.
Whether you go or not. It's nice if you go, but at least, the tickets aren't that expensive.
It's $20 or $25 at the door.
Yeah, I was going to say, $20. You go to McDonald's or McBurger
Right.
World, and you're going to spend $20 at Burger World. So, this way, at least you're doing something nice.
Right.
That's impressive.
And that's one of it's hard because we have such busy schedules in the morning before the kids get there. But one of my favorite things to do is to give a tour, because I can pick out every single piece of furniture and tell the person who donated that, what company gave it, because it's it's so amazing to see. If you look upstairs, I'm sure since the last time when the grand opening, it was empty. We didn't have a lot of furniture, so we couldn't bring a lot back into the building. We got over two truckloads of furniture from the Woodland School when the new building came. We went and picked up everything that we could utilize. And if you go upstairs right now, it's a totally different building. If you go down in the basement, it did about a month ago, it didn't look like it was involved in the project. Benjamin Moore came out for 2 weeks, ceiling, floor, walls, everything painted. It looks like it's involved in the renovation now. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing what this community does to give back to that center and allows us to kind of to proceed with the direction that we want to go in.
Now, you're helping out some of the organizations in Milford. We have organizations, like I remember we were involved in Milford Hopedale Youth Soccer. They always made a fortune. As a matter of fact, they gave $50,000 to do the Woodland Field. But there's a lot of groups in Milford that are barely making it, or they don't charge. And my understanding is you're helping out there.
So we have I mean, for people that don't know how the youth center functions, we do offer a free after-school program from 2:15, 10 months of the year, and then transition into a summer camp program. Mornings and evenings, we have a rental. The facility is able to be rented. So we have a scheduled fee that goes with that rental policy. But any group that comes in has the ability to write a proposal that we bring to the board where that explanation would be made. Or they can come and present themselves to the board, and that's where we make the decision that if that program isn't charging and that we have the space available, or we can make the space available for them, that we'll do that.
Well, I remember one group, special needs basketball. I mean, we all know that there's so many courts in Milford and not enough kids to play on them. There was just no room at any court at any reasonable time. Bobby Littleton, who founded the Evergreen Center, actually stepped up and offered the Special Olympics use of, he's got a 3/4 court, or whatever they call it, and the Special Olympics, who don't charge, got to use it. But then Jen Walsh grew the program, and apparently she went to you, my understanding.
That's correct, yeah.
And you didn't turn her away.
No, no way. Nope, we wouldn't do that.
So they're getting a couple hours here and there, because when you're not charging anything, it's not easy to make.
And it's
ends
going to be
meet.
even easier, once we get the divider for the gym installed, it'll be even easier to offer more time,
Because we can separate those groups out, that some groups only need a half court or one court instead of both courts. And then that gives us the opportunity to have two groups in at the same time.
And I think that was one of the reasons that you got a lot of support from, the FinCom and all, is they realized, spring is usually special occurrence or emergency. Dividing a gym, you can't justify emergency.
I think what's difficult too, though, Al, is that people need to look at how, and I hate to sound this, because I sound old when I say this, but things are different, and I'll give you an example. I was on a tour 2 weeks ago of the Stacy School, and Dr. McIntyre said, "Come here, I want to show you this classroom." Now, he said, before you look at this classroom, you're going to think this classroom is out of control. I stood in the doorway and I watched the teacher, and the kids were not sitting at desks, as I spoke about earlier. They were moving about the room, working on a project that he had given them. But at the end of the day, they all got the correct answer. So I stand there and say, well, who says they have to be all lined up in desks? Who says that they have to be taught a specific way, as long as they're getting the correct answer, and of course they're not being disrespectful or anything.
Sure.
That's the same thing as you see the child in the youth center. That's the future. So if we don't invest in them, then shame on us, because they are the future of our world. I spoke to Dr. Tremblay the other day, and he had a great saying. He said, "I'd rather have my son be a B student and hold the door than have an A and be ignorant." Those are the kind
That's
of
profound.
those are the kind of things that we're working on a daily basis with these children at the youth center: is proper behavior, not proper behavior, proper eating, not proper eating, exercise, manners.
Those are life lessons.
Exactly. And sometimes you need a youth center to teach them that, because unfortunately, because the world has changed, they're not getting it at home. But that doesn't mean they can't get it, and that doesn't mean they don't want to learn, and that doesn't mean they don't want to be disciplined.
Yeah, and when you think about it, when you take your hat and you turn it from chairman of the youth to chairman of the school, it's changed so much. Because when we were kids, the worst thing that could happen is a teacher would say, "Keep it up and I'll call your mother or father."
Absolutely. Oh,
No, beat me, flog me, do anything, but don't call my parents and say I embarrassed the family.
right.
But now, when I was coaching soccer, there were a number of parents who I was amazed, single parent families with 2 or 3 kids, and you're like, how does he or she even keep up?
Right.
You know, I mean, yes, they should have time to teach their children to raise, but if you're running around, I mean, we had 3 against 2. My sainted mother, my darling bride, and I, and we only had 2 kids, so we could gang up on them and get them to places and spend time with them. Like you say, I don't know how some of the single-parent families, how they even have a moment to think.
Well, that's one of the benefits. Like if they have the opportunity to come into the youth center and do their homework, that's one less thing that has to be done when they get home. Because think about it, if it is a single family, a parent family, and they're getting out of work at 5 o'clock and they pick the kids up at the youth center at 5:30, they got to get them home, they got to feed them, you know, get them ready for bed, they probably got laundry to put away or whatever. Who's got time to, so if they can do their homework at the youth center, you know?
And the other thing is some of the, I mean, I remember some of the advanced math that my daughters were learning at high school. I had to go back and really, you know, start looking, you know, some of the concepts in chemistry, because they got onto this, the online school universe.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, it pushed my chemistry background. I'm a chemist.
Yeah.
So you,
And I apologize, I can't think of his first name. He was a customer of mine for years, just doing their math tutoring now.
Amos?
What is it?
Amos?
Yeah. He was some kind of an aerospace engineer or whatever, very successful career. He's up there doing the tutoring. I mean, who could ask for someone to teach him math better than that? You know?
And the kids saw their grades go up, which was
Yeah.
amazing. They were excited to see Amos. It
Yeah.
was,
They brought the
I mean,
grades to Amos.
They would come in and be like, look what I got on my test.
See that?
see, and that's when you know the community's working.
Yep.
And do I understand you got cosmetology?
Well, we have a fashion show in June. The BVT cosmetology department comes and does hair and makeup. So they're coming this month to do just a makeup class for whoever wants to take it.
in preparation.
With us, they'd give us latex.
Or Botox.
Yes, but when they bring out the gallon carpool,
Yeah.
no, you're, okay, we're a bit old.
Yeah.
No, but that's really interesting. So even somebody who just wants to learn makeup tips.
Yeah. So again, we're just putting in front of these kids something that they may think of when they're older, and they liked it then. Maybe it's something they want to go into as they get older.
You know, you spoke about confidence earlier. You know as well as anybody, you build somebody's self-esteem, you build their confidence.
Sure.
And sometimes it's just a simple, makeup class, a hair class, a nail class, a simple, boy, you look great today. And you change somebody's whole world, because they may not have heard that for a while.
Well, I mean, every school deals with the bullying issue and everything else. I remember the first time you came on. It was when young Jen Ward didn't want to talk on camera.
I know it. What a job she's
You
doing
almost won
today.
the whole show without saying that.
Yes, I almost did, but that first show where we had to lasso her and drag her in here,
And look, she came on willingly today.
you see how much she's changed? But the one thing that hit me was a young girl who said, I feel comfortable in the youth center. We're all the same. There's no, what do they call it, cross cliques? That at the high school, that everybody had their own little, I mean, I remember I was one of the geeks. Nobody accepted us. We
Then
just,
she went on to say to you, Al, and I don't mean to interrupt you, she went on to say to you also, Mr. Carrera, you have to understand, this is home to some of us.
yes.
And that's when I was like, this is a place where we can go.
You were there, weren't you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was there.
Yeah. There's a place we can go every day that's safe and people care about us.
We had a whole batch of Utes.
Remember that?
Yeah, it was like poor Liz here had a heart attack when she said, 13 are coming?
Yeah.
I told her in the email that it was just going to be the staff tonight.
Yeah, but it was
She
just funny
seems
because
excited.
she said, how are we going to fit 13?
We did.
And we'll figure it out. And sure enough, we did.
Yeah.
And we have the kids coming, Tori brings the kids every Wednesday to the Milford TV studio. So they help, they're in preparation of making a show for the youth center as well.
Are you really?
Yeah, so far I have 4 kids. They're trained with the cameras and with the editing software. And I have one girl who's trained with the camera equipment, but she needs to get trained with the editing software. But it's all pulling together nicely. We got a few news packages, as they call it, put together already. So
That is really cool, because again, exposing them
Just
to
another opportunity to something
another
they might want to go into.
opportunity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the whole premise of this new studio. When we first started, I mean, you remember we were in the back
Oh.
of the Comcast building,
I remember going there, yeah.
and you only
Me
had
too.
maybe 200-degree swing, because if you went more than that, you saw all the storage.
Right.
You know, and the idea was, I mean, again, you know, when Paul Revere put the equipment in there, it was state-of-the-art and exciting, but it was hard to get kids excited about using 20-year-old technology. Now you're down here, and they've got state-of-the-art cameras, and Rob has just put together not only a great staff, but the editing facilities here are top-notch.
They're
So
great.
the fact that you've got the kids coming down here, just kind of, you know, give them a
It's
taste
amazing.
for what it's like, you know,
Another example of what do they want to do in life?
right.
There's many opportunities.
You know, and let's face it, moms always want to see the kids. One last program.
Ooh, how about, Christine, why don't you talk about nutrition?
Nutrition, okay. So we have a grant from Chana to run a nutrition program. And one of the stipulations of that grant is to have a cooking class every week or a nutrition program every week, and to also offer fruits and vegetables every week. So they get a fruit in that class and also a fruit for doing any type of physical activity for the week. But today, so this month we're focusing on whole grains. So we made popcorn today, which is a whole grain. And they have a lot of fun in that class. It's one of the busiest classes. Last month we did fruits and vegetables. We'll move on to dairy in another month, but it's definitely, like I said, one of the most popular classes.
A life lesson. I
Yeah.
grew up thinking if it was green, it wasn't ripe yet. You know, it took a long time before I realized that it's not a garnish. You can actually eat salad. It's not just there to look nice.
So last week I made some edamame. Have you heard of it? Have you eaten it? It's like kind of
Constantly.
a new trendy.
It's the new trendy, yes.
So whatever I'm making, the kids always want to eat. So I put it out, and they just swarm
is it?
to me. Edamame.
Fancy peas.
You got to poke these little green things out of there, and
So good. It tastes like corn.
yeah, well, I think the idea is it takes so much effort to get them out of the little. You don't eat that many. Sharon brings them all the time. You know, it's like, well, can't I just get them already on?
No,
the
that's the fun part of it, is to eat it out of the pod.
Yeah, she keeps telling me that's the fun part. I said, no, that's like when you tried convincing me to eat Maryland crab, and I found that I'm going to fight this crab to get this much meat. Well, as you can tell, my shape says I should be doing more edamame. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for
Look
having
forward
us.
to the
for
end of
having
the
us.
summer when you can come back and tell us about what we haven't talked about, the whole summer program,
Yeah.
which is such an asset for people who need help during the summer.
Right.
And to our 6 loyal viewers, get to know the youth center. You've invested $5 million plus in it, and it's giving you a heck of a return. There are so many things going on. The geeks, the athletes, you know, every major food group of child seems to be taken care of there. So, you know, whether you're looking for academic help, sports help, or anything else, there's a program there for you. And as always, may God bless. May tomorrow be a better night than tonight. Thank you.
Far too long since I've been home. Been running all my life till